What happens when you trust an AI chatbot to manage an $8 million fortune? Or, when a $1 trillion technological boom relies entirely on a single hardware component that might be obsolete in 3 years?
It's a recipe for chaos, really.
Yeah, totally. Welcome to the 24/7 NovaStream broadcast. Whether you're tracking the live crypto markets, watching the global financial indices, or just, following our breaking news feed, you know that the raw data rarely tells the whole story.
It really doesn't.
I am thrilled to be with you today. My mission for this session is to basically cut through all that noise and deliver the highlights of the day. We are going to get you perfectly up to speed on the actual forces driving these numbers.
Because, today's juxtaposition of events on the feed is truly wild. We are seeing these incredibly sophisticated digital systems colliding with just highly unpredictable human behavior.
It is a massive collision. We've got tech giants scrambling over this artificial intelligence supercycle, a mysterious and permanent destruction of $8.3 million in Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and rising geopolitical tensions throwing the physical oil markets into absolute chaos.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
We are going to unpack all of it, but first, let's do a quick data drop just to ground ourselves. If you look at the Dow Jones futures, a massive piece of the macroeconomic puzzle just slotted into place.
Right, the inflation data.
Yeah, April PCE inflation data, which is the metric the Federal Reserve actually prefers to use it, just hit 3.8% annually.
And that context is so vital for you to understand because it rose 0.4% month over month, which met expectations perfectly.
Right on the dot.
Yeah. And when inflation data aligns with what the market models predicted, it essentially deflates the deepest pricing fears on Wall Street.
Everyone just exhales.
Yeah. Precisely. Investors stop panicking about runaway inflation or, sudden interest rate hikes, and they finally get the breathing room to look at actual corporate fundamentals.
Which completely sets the stage for the massive, almost violent tech movements we're seeing on the feed today. The easing of those macro fears has given the market room to react to earnings in the AI sector. And we are seeing a brutal divergence.
The rising tide is definitely no longer lifting all boats here.
Not at all. Look at the software side. Snowflake stock just skyrocketed like 35 to 39% late in the day. They reported $1.39 billion in first quarter revenue, which is great. But the real catalyst seems to be this new $5 billion multi-year commitment with Amazon Web Services.
Yeah, specifically to use their Graviton chips. And what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of that deal. Snowflake isn't just buying off-the-shelf servers.
But it's deeper than that.
Much deeper.
Yeah.
They're capitalizing on foundational enterprise AI demand. So AWS Graviton chips are custom designed using ARM architecture.
Which means what, practically?
It means they deliver significantly better price-to-performance ratios for cloud workloads than traditional processors. Snowflake is essentially locking in the absolute cheapest, most efficient raw compute power possible to build heavy-duty AI infrastructure for their clients.
Wow. Okay, so that totally explains the near 40% bump. They're, securing the unit economics of AI.
Yeah.
But then I look across the aisle at Salesforce, ticker CRM, and their shares actually sank 1.3% after hours.
Yeah, despite meeting consensus.
Right. They reported $11.1 billion in revenue, hitting the target, but the market punished them.
If we're in this massive AI boom, why is a software giant like Salesforce getting left behind when they actually did what they promised?
Well, it comes down to the existential threat that AI poses to traditional software as a service models.
The SaaS models.
Yeah, the SaaS model.
Yeah.
Salesforce charges per user seat, right?
But if companies start deploying autonomous AI agents, like Salesforce's own agent force, offering to handle, say, customer service or sales, those companies might not need as many human employees.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah. Fewer humans means fewer SaaS licenses. Investors are terrified that if legacy software companies don't show explosive top-line revenue acceleration from their new AI tools, well, their core business model is going to be cannibalized by the very technology they're trying to integrate.
That makes total sense. You are paying for the infrastructure now, not the individual seats, which I guess brings us to the physical backbone of this entire boom, the hardware.
The chips.
Yeah, the chips. Let's look at Micron Technology, ticker MU. They are currently trading around $944 a share.
Incredible run.
They are up over 180%, having their best month since 1987. But Wall Street analysts are looking at this stock near an all-time high and claiming it is still a value play. They're citing a forward PE ratio of just 13.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
Let's break that down for the listener. Why is a stock that is almost tripled still considered cheap?
Because the projected earnings explosion is just so massive that it dwarfs the current price. The demand for artificial intelligence data centers has created this severe supply-demand imbalance.
For a specific part, right.
Yeah, specifically for something called high bandwidth memory, or HBM. Standard memory chips transfer data, kind of like cars on a two-lane road.
Okay.
But HBM chips are essentially stacked vertically, so they create a 100-lane highway. AI models do not just need to store vast amounts of data, they have to push it into the processor at breakneck speeds.
So the memory is actually the primary bottleneck for throughput. Like, without HBM, your insanely expensive AI processor is just sitting there waiting for data to arrive.
That's spot on. And Wall Street projects Micron's revenue will surge immensely over the next 2 years because they are one of the very few companies actually capable of manufacturing these advanced memory stacks at scale.
Okay, but I have to ask, are we just in a really good standard hardware cycle, or is this a permanent paradigm shift? Because strategists at Ned Davis Research are proposing the supercycle theory.
Right, a super cycle.
Yeah, they are arguing that semiconductors are transitioning from cyclical consumer products, where demand relies on people upgrading their smartphones every few years, into foundational global commodities, like electricity.
That is the narrative currently driving the market. Hyperscalers, the massive cloud providers like Microsoft and Google, they are locking in multi-year contracts.
Buying everything up.
Everything. Industry executives are warning that these high-bandwidth memory shortages could persist well into 2027 because the data center build-out is just so aggressive right now.
I have to push back on this, though. This time is different narrative. Whenever Wall Street declares that the old rules of cyclicality are dead, alarm bells go off for me.
Sure, it's a dangerous phrase.
Think about the 19th century railroad barons. When you are building the Transcontinental Railroad, the demand for steel, timber, and labor is astronomical. It feels like a permanent supercycle. But once the tracks are actually laid, the demand for raw steel drops off a cliff.
The overbuilding risk.
Yeah. Could this be a late 90s style super bubble? Once these hyperscalers finish their massive capital expenditures and the data centers are finally built, doesn't the demand for chips just normalize?
And that is actually the most potent bear argument right now. Skeptics warn that massive new semiconductor production capacity is scheduled to come fully online between 2027 and 2028.
Just as the build-out finishes.
Right, and if the real-world monetization of AI software, the actual revenue generated by these tools, doesn't catch up to the billions being spent on the physical data centers, you get severe overbuilding.
A glut.
A massive glut. The current chip shortage will inevitably turn into an oversupply and prices will plummet. When the cycle turns and earnings drop, that cheap 13 PE ratio suddenly inflates and looks incredibly expensive.
And building on that idea of these massive hyperscaler investments, let's look at who actually controls the AI technology that those HBM chips are powering. The corporate Game of Thrones, really.
It's shifting fast.
It is. Microsoft made a legendary $13 billion bet on OpenAI back in 2019, making them the primary cloud partner. But now we are seeing a really fascinating shift in alliances.
Yeah, the HSBC report.
Right. HSBC analyst Stephen Bersey recently released a projection suggesting Microsoft's next major AI revenue acceleration might actually come from OpenAI's rival, Anthropic.
And the projection is just staggering. Bersey models that a partnership with Anthropic could boost Microsoft Azure's revenue by $43 billion annually by 2030.
Wait, $43 billion annually? I mean, I need to understand the mechanism here. Why are enterprises pivoting so hard toward Anthropic's Claude model that it could move the needle by $40 billion for Microsoft?
It basically comes down to enterprise utility and trust. Anthropic engineered Claude with significantly larger context windows.
Meaning you can feed it more data.
Yeah, it means you can feed it hundreds of pages of dense corporate documents at once without it losing the plot or forgetting the beginning of the prompt.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, Claude was built with a core focus on reducing hallucinations and maintaining really strict data privacy. When a Fortune 500 company is integrating an AI into their proprietary legal or financial workflows, they prioritize reliability and security way over flashy consumer features.
Which brings us to the human element behind these competing models. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently published a very revealing blog post responding to a deep dive investigation.
It was surprisingly candid.
Very. He openly apologized, admitting to being conflict averse, and stated that this trait has caused great pain and essentially fostered a culture of groupthink at his company.
This raises a critical question about the structural integrity of the organizations building these systems. We spend so much time obsessing over the algorithms and the compute power, but the corporate governance of the entity building artificial general intelligence is just as vital.
Absolutely.
A culture of groupthink is a massive concern for safety, ethical alignment, and basic technological innovation.
I'm really curious how you read that confession. Is a CEO admitting they're conflict averse a sign of healthy, modern self-awareness? Or is it a glaring corporate liability when you are leading the most valuable AI startup on the planet right in the middle of a cutthroat technological arms race?
I'd say the market almost universally views it as a liability in this specific context. In an arms race, decisiveness is currency.
Right.
If a leader cannot navigate internal conflict, they risk losing top engineering talent, which frankly OpenAI has already experienced,
Yeah.
and they risk falling behind on product shipping. Microsoft heavily integrating Anthropic onto Azure might be a strategic hedge.
A hedge against what?
Not just against technological stagnation, but against potential organizational instability at OpenAI.
Speaking of unintended consequences and instability with AI, I want to pivot from corporate boardrooms to the live crypto markets. There's a bizarre mystery trending on the feed today that perfectly illustrates what happens when automation meets unforgiving systems.
Oh, this is undoubtedly one of the most fascinating stories of the day.
It is crazy. Let me lay out the facts for you. 107 Bitcoin, which had been completely dormant since 2015, were just permanently destroyed.
Just gone.
Gone. Back in 2015, that stash was worth roughly $33,700. Today, with Bitcoin sitting near $75,782, that same stash is worth $8.3 million.
That's a fortune.
And someone just sent it to a famous, provably unspendable burn address. A burn address is essentially a cryptographic black hole. The private keys mathematically cannot exist, so that 8.3 million is gone, permanently reducing Bitcoin's fixed 21 million supply.
The scale of the permanent loss is just staggering. You are looking at generational wealth simply vaporized in a single block.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Nobody just misplaces $8 million down a digital storm drain. There has to be a mechanical reason or a deliberate strategy here. Walk me through the prevailing theories.
Well, the first theory is the most tragic, a catastrophic copy-paste error. Legacy Bitcoin addresses from 2015 typically begin with the number 1, and the famous burn address used in this transaction also starts with a long string of ones.
Oh, no.
Yeah. If someone was using outdated bulk transaction software to move assets that were untouched for a decade, they might have accidentally pasted the burn address instead of their new cold storage destination.
That is sickening. What's the second theory?
The second theory is the polar opposite, intentional destruction. A deliberate $8 million performance art piece to immortalize the wallet owner in Bitcoin lore.
An $8 million flex. I mean, I suppose in the crypto world, crazier things have happened, but surely the IRS isn't going to let someone write off an $8 million mistake just because they sent it to a dead wallet. There has to be a tax angle here.
And that is theory 3. A highly aggressive, tax-motivated capital loss strategy. Under U.S. tax rules, intentionally sending crypto to a verifiable burn address might theoretically qualify as a taxable loss of property with zero proceeds.
So they offset other gains.
Right. You could try to realize a massive capital loss to offset other gains. However, claiming an $8 million intentional loss would invite an immediate, grueling audit from regulatory authorities.
Yeah, good luck with that audit. And then there's the fourth theory, which ties right back into our AI discussion and honestly seems the most plausible.
The AI-fueled mistake. We are seeing a growing trend of inexperienced users relying on large language models to generate complex programming scripts for their wallets.
Never a good idea.
No. And this specific burn address is universally used in online developer tutorials as a placeholder example. The theory is that a user asked an AI chatbot to write a Python script to move their dormant coins. The AI scraped that exact burn address from the GitHub documentation it was trained on and just inserted it right into the code.
It is like asking an incredibly articulate con artist for directions. They will give you a highly convincing, beautifully formatted route that confidently drives you right off a cliff.
That's a great way to put it.
The user copies the script, runs it, and because the blockchain is immutable, the transfer is irreversible. It just highlights the absolute danger of applying a predictive text engine to an unforgiving financial system, like letting a robotic vacuum do heart surgery.
It really does. But, while retail users might be burning fortunes with AI hallucinations, massive institutions are taking a hyper-calculated approach to digital assets, which leads into our next major update on the global financial indices.
Yes, Elon Musk's SpaceX is preparing for a NASDAQ IPO under the ticker SPCX. The projected valuation is astronomical, anywhere from $1.75 trillion to $2 trillion.
Massive numbers.
But what really caught the market's attention is a report from Grayscale Research revealing that SpaceX holds 18,712 Bitcoin on its balance sheet. That is roughly $1.4 billion worth of crypto.
And this represents a real structural evolution in corporate treasury management. Grayscale categorizes corporate Bitcoin holders into two distinct camps.
Okay, what's the first camp?
First, you have digital asset treasuries. These are companies like MicroStrategy, which holds over 840,000 Bitcoin. They essentially function as proxy ETFs, existing to give public equity investors a vehicle to access Bitcoin volatility.
And SpaceX falls into the second category.
Correct. They are categorized as diversified businesses, alongside companies like Tesla and Block. They hold Bitcoin, but it does not dictate their core operations.
What stands out to you as a listener here is the sheer scale and proportion of this. $1.4 billion makes SpaceX the 8th largest known corporate Bitcoin holder on the planet.
What sounds huge.
Right. Yet against a $2 trillion IPO valuation, that massive crypto hoard represents a microscopic 0.1% of their total capitalization. It is literal pocket change for them.
Yeah, it's a fraction of a percent.
It marks a huge shift in the narrative. We are moving away from companies treating crypto as a core identity and toward operational giants treating it as a standard, fractional hedge against fiat currency devaluation.
It mainstreams the asset. It proves that holding billions in digital assets is no longer a fringe strategy. It is just standard operating procedure for a modern corporate treasury.
But let's bring our focus back from the digital clouds of AI and digital assets and look at the harsh physical realities dominating the commodities markets today, because the geopolitical situation is directly impacting global supply chains.
The oil markets are reacting strongly.
Very strongly. Oil prices are surging. Brent crude is climbing toward $97 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate is pushing roughly $91. We have to report on the facts here.
Yes.
The catalyst for this pricing shock is a severe escalation in military engagements. Looking at the official timeline of events, U.S. Central Command stated that U.S. forces conducted strikes targeting missile sites, mine-laying boats, and a drone control facility in southern Iran, specifically near the vital Strait of Hormuz.
NCDCOM's reasoning.
CENTCOM described these as acts of self-defense, reporting that Iranian forces had fired one-way attack drones at commercial ships and attempted to plant naval mines. In response, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims they have retaliated by targeting a U.S. military base in the region.
The market impact of this escalation is immediate. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz has removed approximately 14 million barrels per day of Middle Eastern supply from the global market.
14 million every single day.
Yes. And what is truly driving the premium on oil right now is the collapse of diplomatic off-ramps. There was a proposed peace deal framework that reportedly involved a 60-day ceasefire and joint traffic management through the strait.
But that fell through.
It did. President Donald Trump has rejected key aspects of that proposal, stating the U.S. will not sign an imperfect agreement just to restore traffic. Furthermore, even if a ceasefire were signed tomorrow, restoring physical crude flows takes months.
Right, it's not a light switch.
Exactly. You have to factor in skyrocketing insurance premiums for tanker vessels, rerouting logistics, and just the massive operational backlog.
It is a stark reminder of systemic fragility. We spend all day looking at these massive global risk models, analyzing AI infrastructure and oil supply chains, trying to predict the future. But today's feed also gave us a very sobering reminder of personal risk and human fragility.
Yeah, the sports news.
We received the tragic news that NASCAR driver Kyle Busch has died at the age of 41.
It is a deeply heartbreaking story.
It really is. And what makes it so jarring is that he didn't die in a high-speed racing accident. He contracted pneumonia, which rapidly developed into sepsis. It is a terrifying reminder that despite all our modeling and planning, risk often hits from the angle you aren't looking at.
Yeah, out of nowhere.
A perfectly healthy athlete in his prime, and a few hours difference in medical intervention changes the outcome entirely.
Which brings up a broader theme of personal risk management that actually mirrors the institutional strategies we've been discussing today. Reports indicate that in trying to protect his family's future, Bush sought out specific financial products,
Like what?
notably indexed universal life insurance, or IUL. However, he was reportedly very unhappy with the mechanics of those policies before his passing.
I want to dive into that because life insurance is marketed as the ultimate safe bet. Why wouldn't a policy be a clean, simple safety net for someone with his resources? How does an IUL actually work?
Well, because indexed universal life insurance is an incredibly complex, often leveraged financial instrument. It is marketed as a secure retirement vehicle where your cash value grows based on a market index, like the S&P 500.
Okay, sounds good in theory.
But here's the trap. Your gains are usually capped at a certain percentage, say 8%.
Meanwhile,
The internal cost of the actual insurance inside the policy fluctuates and rises as you age.
oh, I see.
Yeah, so if the stock market goes flat and returns 0% for a few years, your cash value doesn't grow. But the insurance company still deducts those rising internal costs directly from your principal.
So the product designed to protect you can actually eat your underlying capital if the market just moves sideways. It is not a guaranteed safety net at all. It is a complex derivative tied to market performance.
That's it. It serves as a stark cautionary tale that complexity often masks profound risk.
And that is really the ultimate takeaway for today's broadcast. I mean, we cover incredible ground on this channel. We look at artificial intelligence potentially transforming semiconductors into base utilities. We look at that same predictive technology tricking users into permanently burning $8 million fortunes.
A wide spectrum of outcomes.
Yeah. We watch aerospace institutions quietly hedge billions in crypto, and we track the physical reality of oil markets bottlenecked by sudden conflict. We try to find the clean data points to explain it all to you.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. We are currently pouring trillions of dollars of capital into building an AI infrastructure designed to predict, manage, and automate every variable in our world.
Trillions.
Trillions. Yet, if you look at the highlights of the day, from an AI hallucinating a catastrophic error, to the sudden collapse of diplomatic treaties, to the deeply unpredictable nature of human health, they prove a fundamental truth.
What's that?
The most powerful forces shaping our portfolios, our markets, and our lives remain entirely unscripted.
No LLM, no algorithm, and no risk model can account for all of it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this session. Remember, NovaStream streams 24/7, keeping you updated on the live crypto markets, the global financial indices, and the breaking news feed as it happens. Keep your eyes on the data, but always remember to look out for those unscripted moments. We will see you on the next update.